السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الأطيبين الأنجبين، بهم نتولى ومن أعدائهم نتبرأ إلى الله. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. On this night of Imam al-Asr alayhi salam, we ask Allah to hasten his return and to count us all among the best of his servants, and to make Imam happy, pleased and radhi with every one of us. There are a lot of wrong, there is a lot of flaw that is in us, and that can be corrected only and only by the du'as and the mediation of the Imam alayhi salatu wassalam. And we ask Allah to help us accept these tawfiqat, du'as, be the recipient of the du'as of Imam alayhi salam, so that we are able to correct ourselves and reduce this distance that is between us and Allah, which has increased. Returning to our topic, and that is the discipline and the adab of Salat. Before we start our prayers, now everything that is being mentioned is a lesson to myself first, and to you brothers and sisters a reminding. Now, when we stand for Salat, and there are these hayya-alat that are said, hayya ala salah, hayya ala al-falah, hayya ala khair al-amal, in the adhan and the iqamah, that also it works as a starter, as a preparation for the Salat. Salik means this person who has embarked on this journey and who is traveling to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. He prepares his heart, he prepares all his organs and makes them understand, and makes the core of his heart understand the qurb and the nearness of Allah's presence. So observe all the visible and the spiritual moral etiquettes, and admit in a formula, and that is awaken our nature, our inner self, by saying hayya ala al-falah. Hayya means to rush, hasten, be quick. Ala al-falah, towards prosperity. Hayya ala salah means rush, hasten towards Salat. Hayya ala khair al-amal means rush, hasten, quick towards the best of actions. Now, this is the prosperity, the true success that a devoted, sincere man is after. That is, every one of us in our day-to-day lives in this world, we are after kamal, after takamul, after perfection. That somehow whatever we are doing, whatever we are earning, wherever we are living, we want that to be better, and to be better than in every angle, in every dimension. In Salat also it's the same. When we say hayya ala khair al-amal, rush, hasten towards the best of actions, towards prosperity, it's the same. So man's fitrat, his nature, it is always after perfection. And the reality of this prosperity is to get to the true essence of this falah and prosperity, which is tranquility. That is, you want to have a good living in this world so that you are comfortable, you are happy, you are easy. The same applies to this moral and spiritual dimension of man. So he's working, all these efforts are to get to that tranquility. Or that ayah says, Ala bi zikrillah tatma'innul qulub, That is, indeed, it is by the remembrance of Allah, hearts they are at rest, that tranquility can be achieved. In the Salat is also the same. So by Salat you will get to that tranquility, to that falah. So Adhan and Iqamah, they work like the starters, and the aim and the goal of this worship and the destination is Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And this Allahu Akbar, which we repeatedly utter and say throughout this worship, in all the different halat, in all the different transits, that is, ultimately I'm admitting, continuously I'm admitting that the ultimate prosperity is by getting to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And indeed, this Salat, it is the best of actions, it is the best of tools that will lead me towards that khair al-amal, which will get me towards that prosperity, that falah. So followers of Amirul Mu'mineen, they are bonded with Salat, and Amirul Mu'mineen is khair al-amal. When the ayah was revealed, then and people they came and asked Rasulullah regarding khair al-amal, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, he says that Aliyun huwa khairul amal. That khairul amal is Ali. The good actions, all of the good actions, whatever you can think of, all of that is in Amirul Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salatu wassalam. And it was a time when people they used to call and address Amirul Mu'mineen as Khair al-Amal. Mu'mineen who are the followers of Amirul Mu'mineen, they are bonded with Salat. They are connected with Salat, mentioning the Salat, and whenever you see they get an opportunity, they are with Salat. So when you say قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ, you see that you are standing in the presence of who? Presence of Malikil Muluk. And that is, he is the ultimate owner of all the owners. He is the king of all the kings, and he is the only great. And constantly we inform and we keep on mentioning and repeating this to our heart, that we are in the presence of his greatness, and we remind us of our own flaws and shortcomings, and with all shame and shyness we admit that we have stood before the Almighty God with fear and with hope. So with all the wrong that I have, I am ashamed and I am scared. But at the same time, when I look at the beauty of that compassionate God, that merciful God, such great, such lofty, such high, then that gives me a lot of hope that he will accept me, he will forgive me, and he will take this little worship of mine and buy it at a lavish and a lavish price. So we never assume that you have something, no possession, nor any hasanat. So when we come to the presence of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, that has to be the mindset, that I don't have anything, nothing whatsoever. Now on this journey you need two pieces of luggage. One is the a'mal, and then the second is one is the heart, which is sincere, and the second it is the hasanat. Both of them I don't have. Now that I don't have both of them, I feel shy, I feel ashamed in the presence of God. But that what strengthens, it's that hope that I have in me. So these two tendencies that are in me, that is fear and hope, they are good. We have to have them all the time. Never lose hope, and also never get proud of what we have done. Now inshallah, when we talk further, when we come to this Ikhlas and sincerity, there it will be mentioned. So with hope we come to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, that hopefully He will grace us and we will be graced by His special favors. And that is what we say, أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. Is there anyone who could respond to someone who is disturbed, someone who is distressed? إِذَا دَعَاهُ, when he calls and supplicates him, وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ, and he indeed, he eases him, he relieves him, he grants him ease and tranquility. So I come to the presence of God with fear and with hope together. Now when I stand before Allah, now this is, we did talk about this on and off, but today a little bit of a light we'd like to shed on this. So here when we stand before Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, now the adab that we see in the seerah of Ma'asumeen alayhimus salam, كان علي بن الحسين عليه السلام إذا قام إلى الصلاة, Imam Sajjad عليه الصلاة والسلام, when he stood in worship, تغير لونه, his color, it changed. تغير لونه. فإذا سجد لم يرفع رأسه حتى يرفض عرفه. Says when he bowed down in sajda, he wouldn't rise. That was the worship and the sajda and the qiyam of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. Now when we look into the seerah of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, Kana Abi, my father, that is Imam Baqir, Yaqul, say, regarding his father, that is the grandfather of Imam Sadiq, Ali ibn al-Husayn, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, regarding him he says, إِذَا قَامَ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ, when he stood in worship, كأنه ساق شجر لا يتحرك منه إلا ما حركت الريح منه. Says that when he stood in worship, my grandfather Imam Sajjad, he was like a trunk of a tree, like a branch of a tree. That branch is that firm, it wouldn't move unless a wind comes and moves that branch. Says he also was like that. He was so focused and he stood firm in salat from the takbiratul ihram until the salam. Likewise, we have another hadith here regarding Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. Kana yasma' ta'wahu ala hadd milin. Says Prophet Ibrahim, when he stood in worship, he used to cry so much in his prayers that his cry was heard from a mile. That from such a distance, that cry of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was heard, until the Almighty, He praised him in the glorious Quran, and He says, Inna Ibrahim lahalimun awwahun munib. Indeed, Ibrahim was most forbearing, plaintive, and he was penitent. So due to the cry of Prophet Ibrahim in worship that everyone heard, Allah and such lauded and praised him in Quran. Inna Ibrahim lahalimun awwahun munib. Now in his prayers, Prophet Ibrahim, his palpitation was like the boiling of a pot, was heard, and likewise Hazrat Fatima salamullah alayha, her heart also trembled. It beats, her trembling and shaking due to the fear of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. So these are the prayers of these ma'asumeen, the noble. Now that what helps us here is studying the prayers of the noble, of the ma'asumeen, of the A'imma, or when we look into the present world that we are living in, you can see there are so many great personalities, their prayers, ponder into their worship, and that way we can get an understanding of how our prayers and where the flaws are and how it can be removed. Because when you compare something weak with something strong, when you compare an economy class seat with a business class seat, you know all the flaws and what is the benefit and the good in that business class. When you compare the business with the first class, there you see that how much of a vast difference is there. So when we compare our weak prayers with the prayers of someone who performs them better, we find what the flaws are in our prayers. And then when we compare them with someone of a greater rank, of a higher rank, there we come to know how weak our prayers are and how much of an improvement is required. Now one of the things that does help is that du'as of ma'asumeen, not just a mere recital, that we sit and just recite the whole du'a like a tongue twister or something that has been memorized by us without understanding, without pondering, without knowing what exactly the meaning of this du'a is. So we can take a little portion of a du'a and then try to understand that and try to apply it onto ourselves, and with the presence of mood and mind and understanding we can try and recite those du'as. So that is one of the ways how we can improve these prayers, by understanding what and what we are saying, how we are supplicating, and before who we have stood, and what we are asking. Now that is one. The other thing is the joy and enthusiasm in Salat. That is also required. One has to come to Salat with joy, with love, that he wants to. And without that, that success cannot be granted. So we have to train ourselves to love Salat. And that is by studying, looking into the Salat, Quran, du'as, ahadith, seerah of Ma'asumeen alayhimus salam. So for best results, to get to this joy and enthusiasm in Salat, an extra effort is required. That is to avail our heart to greet and to get to this service with joy, with all enthusiasm and all that we want to get to. Now the place where we stand, we choose to say our prayers, that plays a role. The time to offer the prayers, that also plays a role. The atmosphere where I'm standing to say my prayers, the ambience, etc., all of that has its own role to play. So best would be that if you are saying your prayers, to allocate a place where you can say your prayers all the time. If it's your workplace, then you can have a place where you know where to stand and how that place is. If it's your home, have a designated spot. In fact, it is mustahab that you have a place to worship in your homes where you generally and you normally worship. And then it is said that at the moment of death, if death becomes difficult, at times you bring him and you place that person in that place, in his room where he used to offer his prayers. That would ease the pains and of death and the transfer from this world to the barzakh, to the next. That will ease. So prayers have that impact, have that effect. So the time also should be such that the soul, it is receptive, it accepts, it is ready to embrace. Now that also we have to work on it. That is, we doesn't mean that whatever time, no, work for that on time and that time of fadila. And to get to that point, you have to start preparation before the time enters. So before the time enters, you are ready, your mat is ready, and then the place where you want to stand, everything is ready. And if you've got a few minutes left, you recite a little bit of Quran, and by the time the Salat time has entered, you quickly switch from Quran to Salat. So that is that beautiful way. And we do have ayah in Quran which says the same. That is, you come to Salat and Quran together. Now in the Muslim countries like Iran, like Iraq, in Syria also you do have that. Before the call of azan, you hear the qari reciting Quran, and quickly it moves on to the azan. So that is that sunnah, that is that way that Allah has mentioned in Quran, that you come to Salat with Quran. That is, you welcome and greet prayers with Quran. So recite a little bit of a Quran, a few ayat, and then you switch to your prayers. Now, so the soul has to be receptive, the heart has to be receptive. If it's tired and sluggish, you don't come. Quran says, وَلَا يَأْتُونَ الصَّلَاةِ إِلَّا وَهُمْ كُسَالَى. And they do not perform their prayers but lazily, and do not spend but reluctantly. So this sluggish or this kusala has been interpreted in riwayat as tired, as sluggish. So coming towards prayers tired, it's not nice. So we have to come to prayer with joy, with enthusiasm, fresh. And for that also, to maintain that freshness, you have to program your day such that when you sleep, when you wake up, when you offer your prayers, so that the best of the times which are for Salat, that have been designed by Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, we also greet those times in the best of moods and manners. If it is such that we just keep up all night and then towards the morning we are tired and sleepy, that Salat will be not offered in the best mood and manner. For that sleeping hours, they have to be tuned. We have to sleep on time. Allah has made the night to rest. وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ سَكَنًا. that Allah says, we have made the night to rest. So you rest at night, however much it's possible for you. You wake up and you say your prayers. If you want, you can rest have a little nap during the day, and then that is what Allah teaches the Prophet as well. He says at night you get up and offer a few rak'at and you offer your worship and prayers. وَإِنَّ لَكَ فِي النَّهَارِ صَبْحًا طَوِيلًا. Because during the day you have a lot of tasks, so many efforts are there, so much work you have to do, you're going to get busy, so you won't be able to worship then. So at night take some time out. So sleep, rest and worship. Another ayah in Quran says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la taqrabu salat wa antum sukara. Do not approach, do not come to salat when you are intoxicated. When someone is drunk, God forbid, instructions are that he must not come to salat. Now this ayah, for us, we're going to interpret in a different way. Drunk meaning that not in a status where he knows what he doesn't know what he is saying. So he's in a state tired, sluggish, sleepy, and has come to say his prayers. He doesn't know what he's saying, he doesn't know what he's doing. So in such cases, it's better for him that he comes to offer prayers when he is in a better mood. La taqrabu salat, because with this salat we want to ascend, we want to get connected to Allah. With a salat which is so weak, which is so da'if, that a person he cannot get connected. So for that to happen, we have to be in a good mood, in a good mood and manner. Now, Hadith says that can we come to salat or force to ourselves to salat? Say we come to that. La takrahu ila anfusikum al-ibadah. You don't force worship on yourself. You have to come towards worship with love. So it doesn't mean that I'm not feeling, that's why I don't pray. No, you have to pray. You have to make and bring about and tune that joy, that love, that enthusiasm to pray in yourself. So you have to work on that so that you come to prayers. You have to come to prayers. Now that you have to come, you come with joy, with love, with enthusiasm. So that is what we have to work on. So with an excuse that I don't want to force myself to worship, I don't pray. No, you have to pray, and then you have to force yourself to create that joy, that enthusiasm and love towards worship. Amirul Mu'mineen Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa wasallam, to Amirul Mu'mineen, he says that Ya Ali, inna hadha ad-deen mateenun فأوغل فيه برفق ولا تبغض إلى نفسك عبادة ربك. Says Ali, this deen is very fragile, very delicate. Handle with care, with love. Don't make your soul detest worship. So when a person is tired and sluggish, and when you ask him to come towards prayer, he's going to have negative remarks towards prayer. So for that soul, we have to tune it and we have to train it that it comes towards worship with love. So again, another hadith from Imam Askari alayhi salam, he said, إِذَا نَشَتَتِ الْقُلُوبِ فَأَوْدَعُوهَا, that when the hearts are happy, you invite them, and if they are not happy, you do not in a good mood, you don't. So this was regarding coming towards worship and prayer with love, with enthusiasm. Now one of the other topics which is quite important, and that is that we have to work on safeguarding the prayers from being hijacked by Shaitaan. Every good action, just like this world, whatever you have, if it is valuable, if it is good, it can be stolen, you can be mugged, you can lose it. Just like that, Salat, it is valuable. And Salat is that worship which brings man towards God. And Shaitaan doesn't like that. So Salat can be hijacked at any moment. So one of the toughest tasks that Quran also mentions is الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَاتِهِمْ يُحَافِظُونَ. That is mu'mineen. They are those who work on protecting and safeguarding Salat. Just like the body which needs to be properly nourished, quenched and fed to properly grow and survive, the heart and the soul too, it needs to be provided, needs to be nourished, need to be fed. And that too, spiritually, it needs to blossom. For that, all that nourishment has to be given to that. Just like the human body, if that water and drink and that nourishment and the provisions are not provided, you see that it fails weak. it gets sick, and all these different illnesses, they come towards it. For that not to happen, you have to keep it well hydrated, quenched and nourished and provided. The same thing applies to the soul. For that soul to blossom, you need to nourish the soul. You need to provide the soul. You need to quench the soul. And how is that? That is by salat, by this worship, by bonding with Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And this is all what Shaitaan doesn't like. And he would want to come and somehow hijack and take away the prayers from this person. So we must know that every provision that is pure, every provision that is Shaitaan free, that has no touch or the effect or the essence of Iblis is there in it, that is sincere with no contamination. Now this service which doesn't have any contamination, which is Shaitaan free, that can happen with the support and the assistance of the wilayat of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam and Waliyullah al-A'zam. Today it is Imam al-Asr alayhi salatu wassalam. The heart and the soul, it is nourished through them, immunized by the wilayat, and such a salat will ascend and reach the nearness of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Now you will not be safe from Shaitan's hijacking this service unless you are sincere in all the phases of this service. Now in this journey, we have to want and seek God and only God. For that, the selfishness or the self-want that is in us, that has to be put aside. And the cause of all the corruption that is, as mentioned in Hadith, the mother of all moral diseases is the self-want or the hubb ad-dunya, the love for this world. And all of that is also because of that self-want. So this is not an easy task, but does not mean that we have to lose hope. We can get to what we want. We don't lose hope. We ask, we continue asking Allah. We get help from Rasulullah and the Ahlul Bayt, Imam al-Asr alayhi salatu wassalam in particular, and that way we can get to this Ikhlas, we can get to the destination. Now, the other topic that we have, it is Ikhlas. It is Ikhlas. Ikhlas means sincerity, means purity. We have to monitor all of our actions all the way through, and that is, there are 4 actions that we have to monitor in particular. One is love for wealth. Second, it's this rank and position. And then we have name, and then we have fame. So these are those things where we have to work on. And this way, in man, he can pollute himself, contaminate himself, and that sincerity, that ikhlas can be lost. So there are issues that tarnish man and degrade him from the high values, from that lofty position. As a result, he collides and becomes most worthless. Now the pure God-given soul, it must not be tarnished or polluted. It must not acquire any color which does not belong to Allah. As Quran says, Sibghat Allah wa man ahsanu min Allahi sibgha. Sibgha means color. That is, receive the baptism of Allah, or we receive the color of Allah. And who is better than Allah at coloring? And we are His worshippers. So there has to be some kind of a reflection, some kind of a color in us which resembles the color and the baptism of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. If that comes in our lives, then we will be safe. So if the colors were divine, growth will be tayyib, pure, and its effects also will be eternal. So therefore, that what would result in this ikhlas not being there in our lives is because of the contamination, and if the actions, they are not sincere and pure for Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So aim is Allah, who is all pure. He wants actions also that are all pure. Quran says, At-tayyibatu lit-tayyibin, wat-tayyibuna lit-tayyibat. Says tayyib means pure. Pure is for the pure. If we want to give something to God, that purity is required. Because He is all pure, actions also they have to be pure. How can actions be pure? When they are sincere. Sincere meaning that there is no other color in those actions. All the color they carry, it is the color of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And it is a difficult task to maintain this sincerity and the ikhlas. So before the action itself, the niyyat has to be pure. The purer the intention, the purer the action. And a pure intention guides man. When performing the action, so we've got an action we want to do, ikhlas is required before the action. In our case, salat. We want to perform this salat. So before that salat starts, so that ikhlas and sincerity has to be there. So in my niyyat, that ikhlas has to be there. When I'm saying my adhan and iqamah, that ikhlas has to be there. That sincerity has to be there. Now with pests like shirk and riya, one may ruin his deeds. Quran says, وَقَدِمْنَا إِلَى مَا عَمِلُوا مِنْ عَمَلٍ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ هَبَاءً مَنْصُورًا. And like for example, you've seen, Quran says, the beautiful example that it mentions is that you would see that on a rock in a dark night. You would see that there is so much of dust that has settled on that rock, and then all of a sudden you see a gush of a wind has come and it blows away all that dust away. So everything is lost. Says actions that are done for Allah without ikhlas are like that dust that has settled on the rock, and with just a gush of a wind you see that the dust is gone, actions are also lost. So an action without ikhlas, it's a waste of an effort. So one has to be cautious with his actions every moment of his life, as a result of which he will be blessed with a status which constantly is in search of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And God, He makes him successful to think right, to say right, and to perform right. So ikhlas before the action. So before the salat, that sincerity has to be there. And now ikhlas after the action. We've completed our salat, and now we still have to maintain that ikhlas. If that ikhlas is lost, that salat also will be gone. Like for example, as long as we are living in a rented accommodation, there's nothing to worry. The maintenance of that house is not our job. But the moment you become a home owner, it's your duty to maintain the house, and everything has to be done by you. Just like that. When you have created an action which is yours, and if you want that to remain, you need to maintain it. Creating an action, it's easy. Maintaining an action, that is the tough task, that is the difficult task. Just like this Islamic revolution, it came into existence. It may not have been that difficult compared to it maintaining it and keeping it alive in these 42 years. That is a tough task. With all this animosity worldwide, globally, in every phase, in every dimension, to keep it firm and strong, that is a difficult task. Salat also, we've done it, it took 3-4 minutes. But to maintain that salat, to keep it alive, that is the difficult task. And with ikhlas, that can remain. Now for this salat, you have to be careful that whatever we have gained as a result of this lifelong struggle is not lost instantly. Now this again is the highest levels of spirituality that we find, and the toughest as well, that al-ibqa'u ala al-amal. First of all, it is sincerity, ikhlas, before the action, and then ikhlas is required amidst the action while I'm saying my prayers, and then ikhlas is required after the action. So these 3 phases, and the toughest one, it's the third one, to retain it, to maintain it, even after the action is complete. Amir Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, he says that al-ibqa'u ala al-amal hatta yakhlus ashaddu min al-amal. That is, remaining on that action, that is the toughest of all. and remaining and retaining an action is tougher than the action itself. So to understand this in an easier way, if you like a pure spring which is not polluted, you see that a spring has gushed out, and the opening or the outlet of that spring, it's nice and clean and pure. You come by the spring, you can drink water because there is no contamination. Now sometimes this water, it gushes out of that spring and it is flowing in a river, and all the way you see that it's pure, you can still use it, there's no contamination, the purity has been observed. At times you see that amidst that path of that water there is pollution, there is contamination, so that will destroy and ruin that water. And at times you see the origin is safe, the path is also safe, the destination where this water is reaching, that is contaminated. So the origin was good, the path was good, the destination is bad. So it's lost there. And the best of all of them, it's the origin be pure, the path also be pure, and the destination also, which is the after, that also has to be pure. Then you see that how beautiful that water would be and how everyone would benefit from that. Actions that we do are the same. So that purity has to be there before the action, purity has to be there amidst the action, and purity has to be there after the action. Now there's a saying in Farsi, they say gav have manshir, that is, you have a cow, you milk that cow, gives all that milk, you fill those buckets with that fresh milk from the cow, and all of a sudden that cow, it kicks the bucket and all of that milk is lost. These actions that do not have ikhlas in it are like that kicking of that cow which just spills away everything. So we also do so much, and if that ikhlas and sincerity is not there, it will just ruin everything. Now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, talking about this ikhlas, which is sincerity, he says, inna akhwafa ma akhafu alaykum ash-shirk al-asghar, that what I fear from you the most, it's the lesser shirk. Qalu wa ma ash-shirk al-asghar, they said that, Ya Rasulullah, and what is this shirk al-asghar? Rasulullah replies, huwa riya, that is riya. Riya means to show the action to someone. And then Allah continues in this hadith and says, يَقُولُ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, on the day of judgment, Allah would say, when the rewards will be given to everyone, and this person who did perform the actions, but the actions were to show to others, there Allah would tell him that go and get the reward of these actions that you have performed from him who you showed the actions to. So I'm not going to give any ajr and reward for that action, that wasn't for me. Everything has to be only and only for Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, if He is the one who wants to reward us for those actions. So ikhlas, sincerity, to specialize, to have a true intention. Mukhlis is someone who performs his worship and actions wholly and solely for Allah. He has no other intention, no other inclination, but seeking the nearness of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. Hence it is only Allah he associates with, as a result of which flattering, mocking of people doesn't matter. For them it's all equal. For him, worship means to seek the rida and the contentment of the Creator and no one else. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, he says that al-ibadatul khalisatu Allah yarjur rajul illa rabbah. A khalis and a sincere worship is that man, he hopes from no one but from his Lord, does not fear anyone but his own sins. And likewise Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says that for a person who has arrived at that level of ikhlas, for him it doesn't matter whether people are going to praise him or whether people are going to mock him or talk bad about him. For him it doesn't matter in either cases. If he has done something for Allah with ikhlas, with sincerity, doesn't matter. People, they talk good, they talk bad. He has done his duty, and that is what concerns him. Now, importance and the value of ikhlas that we have. Ikhlas, it's the core of every worship. If we want an action, now you've seen yourself that people, they have some of them, they have such barakat. Some masjids, some centers, some ulama, some books, they have immense barakat in it. That is the result of that ikhlas that was done by the creator of that amal, of that action. Now, someone built a mosque, for example, with all that ikhlas. You would see it's hundreds of years have passed, and then still that mosque is there, and people, they go there to worship, and that is that barakat, that ikhlas of the founder member who made that masjid, and that who initiated in that noble cause. As a result of his intentions, his ikhlas, the action continues after him. Or for example, when you look into books, there are so many books that have been written, millions of books have been written. Some of the books, they have a special place. Like for example, Mafatihul Jinan. Mafatihul Jinan, the author of this book, died about 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Now this great alim died in the late 60s. Now this great alim, his book, we see that after the copies of Quran that have been published, Mafatihul Jinan, worldwide, millions and millions of copies, and then in different languages. How come this book sought a place in every Shia home, and it is such important? That is that ikhlas and sincerity of the author, the writer of that book. And it so happens that the book was ready, and the students of Marhum Sheikh Abbas Qummi, they said, why don't you publish the book? He says, okay. He just, for 2 years he delayed the publication of the book. And then when it was published, it was in very large circulation. The students, they came to him and they said that you delayed this publication by 2 years. Had you done this 2 years ago, how much of a more benefit you would have got, so much of ajr and sawab, and how much mu'mineen would have benefited from this beautiful book. He says that the 2 years that I had put it on hold, I was practicing this every dua, every observance, every salat, every fast, every worship of it myself. I was applying it onto myself. I said I'll do it once or twice, and then I'll send it to be publicized. Then you see that's the result of that ikhlas of that alim, that we see this book. It has got such a lofty position in the lives of the followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So that is that ikhlas, as a result of which so much an immense barakah is provided by Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Now the Almighty in Quran says, فَادْعُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. That is, therefore you call upon Allah being sincere to Him in obedience. So that ikhlas is required. Amirul Mu'mineen says, ikhlas, it is the condition to have your actions accepted. One who does not associate with ikhlas, his actions will not be accepted. Without ikhlas, nothing will be accepted. Now that what will makes us arrive at those high ranks, it is that ikhlas. And one who does not associate with ikhlas, his actions will not be accepted. Ikhlas is to purify the action from everything apart from Allah. So we do see that there are so many impurities in our actions when we stand in worship. Maybe my hearing, the way I recite, and that riyah, that showing is there. So all these are contaminations that are there in that worship. So we have to clean it, and we have to keep on cleansing it all the time. It's an ongoing effort. Takes a long time, decades, 20, 30 years, of one's time. Now, Ikhlas also, it can be briefed in in 3 stages. So, purifying an action due to the fear of the day of judgment, although the action is itself is sincere, but is categorized as the worship of the slaves. Now, when we see the statements of Amirul Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, so people, they worship due to the fear of hell. Some people, they worship to get into the heaven, that is due to the want and the desire of the heaven and the whatever the blessings and ni'amat are there. Some people, like Amirul Mu'mineen, they don't worship due to the fear of the hell or due to the desire of the heaven. Says that I found the Almighty ahlan, that is, I found him worthy to be worshipped, so I worship him. That is that highest level of ikhlas a person can arrive at and get to, and that is due to love and sincerity and ikhlas, he worships. Now, how to get to this ikhlas? Ikhlas is to purify the actions from every impurity. A mukhlis, he has no motivation but seeking the nearness of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. So what shall we do to get to this level of sincerity? We must have no hope in anyone else apart from God. Marhum Imam Khomeini, he was the neighbor of Ayatollah Allama Tabatabai. And early days of the revolution, he was in Qom, and thousands of people coming in the streets and chanting slogans for him. He says, I came to Allama Tabatabai and said to him, I'm sorry that you are the neighbor here and there is so much of noise pollution and people making all the disturbance being caused for you. And then he says to him that all of these people who are saying that long live Khomeini, if all of them they come and they say death to him, death to Khomeini, for me it's not going to change a little bit in my move, in my action, in my duty that I have to perform. That is that height of ikhlas. Whether people mock, whether people praise, it doesn't matter. Imam Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam, he says that one would not be a true worshipper but that he breaks from every creation and remains with God. He, the Almighty, then says, the sincere act is for me, and by His grace, He, the Almighty, He accepts. Now, to increase ikhlas, we must increase our knowledge. We must increase our yaqeen that yaqeen that we have has to be increased. Amirul Mu'mineen says that ثمرة العلم إخلاص العمل. The fruit of knowledge is sincerity in actions. So if that action was sincere, that will be the fruit of the ilm that we have acquired. إخلاص العمل من قوة اليقين. The more the yaqeen and the certainty, the stronger the aqidah of someone, you would see that his actions also, they are more sincere. For more sincere actions, ikhlas is required, and that yaqeen also has to be strengthened. And one of the other things that helps in intensifying this yaqeen is by reducing hopes. وَقَلِّلِ الْآمَالِ تَخْلِصْ لَكَ الْآمَالِ. Says reducing your hopes will purify your actions. Having hopes, too many hopes, that is also not nice. Yeah, having hope in Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, that's something else. Now, hopes meaning that too many desires and wants that we have regarding this dunya, that also becomes a hindrance towards the ikhlas a person he can achieve. So ikhlas, its effects also, they are amazing. Nearness of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala is sought. And then says تقرب العبد إلى الله سبحانه بإخلاص نيته. That is, the nearness of Allah is sought by a sincere intention. So we have to work on that. And the Hazrat Fatima salamullah alayha, she says that من أسعد إلى الله خالص عبادته أهبت الله إليه أفضل مصلحته. One who sends forth his sincere worships to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, Allah also sends forth the best of His intentions to His servant, to His creation. So Ikhlas is important. Now, one of the other ulama that we have, Marhum Ayatollah al-Uzma Burujirdi, in the last days of his life, he's an old man now, about plus 90s. One day he was crying. The office staff, they come to him and say that, why are you crying? Why are you upset? He says that I'm also leaving. A term was given to me and time's up, and soon I have to depart. And I'm leaving without anything in my possession. They said, why without anything? You've done so much, so many thousands of students you educated, you raised, so many mosques you built. You've been the marja taqleed for worldwide, and you were the whole sole authority for mu'mineen. And this Masjid Azam in Qom also was built by you, and then numerous madrasas and what not. So all these services are in your a'mal. He says, he starts crying again. Says, Hadith says, خلص العمل فإن الناقد بصير بصير. Says, purify your actions, for the person who is checking these actions, the critique, he is well aware of all of my actions. So the amal, its intention is seen, the performance is seen, and my niyat is seen. What my heart was receptive or not, that is seen. My mind, the presence of my heart, everything is judged and measured, and that is that naqid, to who these actions are being presented. He is the one who has to accept. He itemizes the actions, and we have to work and to get these actions accepted by Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Inna Allaha khabirun bima ta'amalun. He is well aware, He knows of what you do. And ma indakum yanfad wa ma indallahi baq. That is, whatever is with you, it will perish. That what is with Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, that will remain forever. If you want to endure, your actions to endure, that ikhlas is required. With ikhlas, the action remains, that action continues. And it was the ikhlas of Sayyid al-Shuhada, ikhlas of Rasulullah, that we see that sincerity of his was such that today on the surface of this earth, after all those painstaking days of his time, and even after him, it was his ikhlas that Islam is alive today. Ikhlas of Rasulullah, ikhlas of Abu Abdullah, ikhlas of the Imams, ikhlas of the ulama, mujtahideen, muraji' that have kept this deen alive. And the reason behind all of that was ikhlas. Ma indakum yanfad. What is with you will perish. But that what is done for Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, that remains, that endures. وسبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.